This train is part of a Lego coding set. It was donated by a really nice man on Oahu that wanted to see.
Yes, let's try to figure it out and put them together.
The instructions for the Lego set say, show your child how the train works. But we really couldn't figure that out.
I don't know. I don't know that train house.
Welcome to the Hawaii Keiki Museum.
The boat looks like the picture.
Great work.
Look at it, she did it.
I like the cake on top. That's the most important part.
It's a statue cake.
A statue cake.
Meanwhile, in the back of the museum, some new exhibits are taking shape.
There's something new at the Hawaii Keiki Museum.
We've already seen the rocks that are in the front of the house.
Reminds me of an ice cream cone.
We now have a geology class working in the back of the house.
Here we are, taking things out of our tumbler. This is only 1 week of tumbling. You can see they're all still very rough. These ones had been in the tumbler for about a month, but this is carnelian. It's very hard. It really isn't going to round out and make kind of smooth, pebbly shapes that we're looking for. So we might just throw this in the vibratory tumbler for a little while, see what happens to it. Speaking of vibratory tumbler, this is where we're at. Everything is nice and smooth, but awfully dull. You can see there's no shine on that at all. And it may be that we had started to use this medium here in the vibratory tumbler, and that might have been a wrong idea. That might have actually, instead of helping polish things, might have unpolished them a bit, because everything has a very uniform unpolishedness to it. And it's been in that tumbler now 4 days, so that's not quite right. Definitely need to try something a little bit different.
This week we had a middle school club. They're a geology club. Come to the museum and check out our rock collection. We spent a lot of time talking about lapidary. So lapidary is that science of turning rocks, minerals, into gems, right? So it's a process of polishing. It's a process of cutting, shaping the rocks to make them the most that they can be. Sometimes you're cutting the rock, you're trying to take a flaw out. Sometimes you're just polishing them the way they are to bring out their natural beauty and shine. And lapidary takes many forms. So most people know about rock tumbling. That's the simple, National Geographic tumbler you buy at the store, and you throw a bunch of rocks in it and you let them just roll around each other until they look like pebbles. So what rock tumbling does is it takes all the sharp edges off. It will actually change the shape of the rocks. So we showed them some rocks that we had before they tumbled and some rocks after they'd been tumbled, and to show them how the shape of the rocks gets smooth and changed. Then we showed them something that's a little bit newer. It's called a vibratory tumbler. The vibratory tumbler is a shaker, and what it's doing is it's creating this sort of torus shape, which is sort of a donut shape, and all of the rocks kind of fall in and under the torus. It's a really neat process. It's a really neat look. It's a really neat effect. And what's happening with that shaker is it's not changing the shape anymore. It's just polishing. So you do have to add grit. You have to add a little bit of water, and so that the rocks are coated with the grit, but not over wet and not over sticky, right? So if there's not enough water, then they get really thick and really sticky. So after you've done this vibratory, you really get a nice shine on it. Now, if your rock isn't already round and circular, you can still get a very nice shine on a rock in the vibratory tumbler. Another thing that we've got going at the museum is the lap wheel. There's a couple of ways that people like to polish and shape rocks. You start with maybe a saw, you cut the shape that you want, or you cut a slab like a coaster or something like that. Another thing that you might do is polish it on a wheel. So the wheel could spin flat on a flat lap, or the wheel could spin like a big cam, and you kind of hold your rock and you get the shape that you want up against the spinning wheel. What we've got is the flat lap, but we've got it mounted on a nice little angle so you can kind of sit comfortably at the wheel, hold your rocks, and start polishing. So a couple of these kids got a chance to sit there and they picked a rock that they liked, a geode or a node that they had found in the collection, and they started kind of holding it against the wheel and seeing how it polishes up. So you start, of course, with like low levels of grit, things like 80 grit, 100 grit, 120 grit. As you're climbing in number, you're climbing in the amount of sand or grit per square inch. So as the number gets to be more and more, you can tell the amount of sand, the size of each grit, gets smaller and smaller. And so as you get to finer and finer grit, just like with sandpaper, you're getting to finer and finer finishes, you're getting to more and more of a polished surface. So we started them with both the flat lap wheel, and we actually had a hand polisher as well with some low-level grit to really try to take off some real big scuffs and some deep gouges and marks that the saw had left behind on some of the rocks that we had in our collection. And they really started to kind of see, how does it work, what changes can they make, and how do the tools work. After you kind of do that low-level polishing, we started to change the wheels out. So there was one girl that had picked a rock, it's either a fluorite or maybe it's an amethyst. It had a lot of scuffs and scratches, but it was very translucent. It was a good sized chunk. And she figured out that if she held it on the lap wheel, she could really get it to polish. And then we changed the wheel a couple of times to kind of make higher and higher grit. And we actually got her all the way up from 100, 200, 300, 400, 600. Actually, we got her all the way up to 3,000. And at 3,000, you could really start to see that there was a shine on there. Even though it wasn't quite a mirror finish where you could like catch the sun, it was very shiny. And so she was very pleased at seeing that progress. But then we talked about the fact that she was shining a flat surface. There was one side of her rock that was flatter than the others. And she wasn't going to get that shine on the other side of the rock, not without additional tools and a different process. So that's what we're going to talk about with them next week. More of them are going to be able to pick a rock, start shining it, start polishing. We'll see where they take it from there. We're really excited working with this geology club. They're a great group of kids, and it's going to be a lot of fun.
We went ahead and broke down the tall saltwater tank. It was just not coming together nicely. So we've moved everybody back in here. You can see we've got some nice glass shrimp in here, and actually found a couple of babies. So they might even be breeding. So mostly what we've got going in here now is our shrimp and hermit crab tank with our friendly little crab, green crab there. We'll see how they do in this tank for a while. It's just a little 10-gallon. So this tank was just really hard to clean. That was the problem. You know, getting your hand in there was tough. Here we are at the robot arms again. Not so sure how easy it is to see them anymore now that they're in this building with all this infrastructure. They're really just sitting here nicely, quietly, waiting for us to come up with some 3-phase power to be able to make them work. In the meantime, Darren's been refinishing these shelves. They're really kind of a fun little shelf. It's from a grocery store nearby that went out of business. So we're going to be able to put all kinds of things up on these shelves. Just need another little coat of lacquer.
A few weeks ago, Plinko got a little bit of an update, trying to get these hockey pucks to just roll all the way to the bottom without getting jammed up or wedged. The back of the Plinko station is a nice little step, so the little ones can get right up in there and drop their hockey pucks right in the slot. The float and air scarves are really a lot of fun, especially with the high ceilings. Those scarves can get really up there.
I'm gonna see it again.
Mahalo, aloha, shak.